Hello, Steve White, TrekBoy89 for SteveArts89. I wanted to make a short video about why they shouldn't make the J.J. Abrams Star Trek 4 in the Kelvin universe. The main reason, which was not the reason that brought my attention to this issue and wanting to do this video, but the main issue is the cast. They can't afford the J.J. Abrams cast, the Kelvin universe cast, and even if they could, if they spent all their money on the cast, if the crew took a pay cut so they could, revisit their family and that again, and the crew that they worked with for 10 years or whatever, they can't get Anton Yelchin back because he's died, and they just can't recreate that magic, I don't think. And some other people have moved on, like Robert Orci, and there's other people who probably wouldn't come back, like JJ. So going back down memory lane and trying to recapture, the family, feeling that they had with that crew isn't really a reason to make a new Star Trek film. Now, another reason, of course, is a production reason. It's kind of superficial, but the Enterprise at the end of Beyond, the Enterprise A, looked awful. Now, they redesigned the Enterprise for each film, which I didn't really notice between the first and second films until I sort of saw some graphs and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh wow, they really did make a few changes I didn't really notice. But the difference between the second and third film are huge, and that's because they had to make the Enterprise more vulnerable so they could destroy it easier, because they were trying to save money by destroying the Enterprise and filming, the whole film on Planet Canadian backlot. And that really didn't help them save much budget anyway. So we lost the Enterprise, we lost any sort of semblance of being a Star Trek film going out at exploring. They're really just stuck on the planet the whole time. It's gone, and when they got a film, at the end of the film, when they got another ship, and they got the A, it just looked awful. They kept making it worse and worse and going in the opposite direction, because there were a few proportional issues people had with the Enterprise and the JJ film, but I thought they were okay. But they just exaggerated them, made them worse. The elements that made it different from the original Enterprise, they just pushed further on them with the new design, and it just makes the ship just looks woeful. It's disproportionate, out of shape, and it's just awful. And I don't want to see that ship. I remember watching the end of the movie and going, I don't need to see that ship again. I don't need to see that for a whole film. So that's a reason not to do a Star Trek film. And the other reason is just they just can't afford to do a JJ scale film anymore. They can't afford it now. The original Star Trek films were made on small budgets. I mean, the motion picture didn't cost that much. They rolled in all the pre-production, failed productions, all the money they spent on those over like 5 or 6 years into that film. That film probably only cost like 20 million, which is still a decent amount and like twice as much as Star Wars. But Wrath of Khan, which was made for the TV wing, was only made for about 13 or 14 million. So they only saved about 5 million. It wasn't the huge difference, but it did help that film made a little bit less than motion picture be profitable, and help them to keep making them, because they made each film cost a little bit more, but it all made about the same amount of money. And then Star Trek 4 made a lot more, and First Contact made a lot more. So there was an up and down, and they knew that they had a basic audience they could count on to come back every time and give them a certain amount of box office. And if they could engage the general audience a bit more, they'd get a bit of extra money, like Star Trek 4 and Star Trek 6. Star Trek 8, First Contact. And, I mean, the JJ films just didn't make enough money. When you actually look at it, they sold Paramount a grift and said, hey, if you pay like 3 times more, pay us 3 times more to make a Star Trek film, $150, $200 million, we'll get you $1 billion box office. That never happened, because they just thought if they paid more money on production and paid more money for advertising, all the lemmings would just come. And it's like, no, Star Trek had an established audience, and they're not that stupid. They're not just going to fall for that. A lot didn't return, and they got some new general science fiction fans, in, but they didn't really stay with Star Trek, because what they came for was the big special effects and the JJ stuff, and they really didn't follow through with that with Enterprise so much. With Discovery so much. What they did do was deny the universe with that production, where the JJ films originally, it was a alternate timeline in the canon universe. Then Paramount wouldn't let them use that universe. And they did acknowledge at some point after the first film that it was a different universe, because they couldn't get the copyright to the original canon universe. But then once they started to make Discovery, one of the things they blamed the JJ films on not making money was that it was an alternate universe. So then they thought, well, we'll just lie to fans and tell them that the Discovery films are made in the same universe, even though they're not, and they don't look like they are, and they don't even try to act like they are. They thought that would help retain original fans, and that didn't really work. But now they've created a new timeline to justify the changes and the differences with still maintaining the denial that it's the same universe. I don't know why they're doing that. But either way, they can't afford to make a JJ film. They lost money. There's a ceiling of how many fans will go, how much money they can make, and increasing the budget doesn't increase the audience. And they've just made it more expensive than they can afford now. So their only chance is to make like a film like maybe a little bigger but the same sort of as Section 31, where it's sort of made through the TV Discovery sort of wing where they're already in production with Star Trek, kind of like what they did with Wrath of Khan. That's the only chance they've got. And I'd be fine with that if it was a good Star Trek story. I wouldn't care if they took the production down a bit and it was a more simple film, as long as they have a different Enterprise, which they will have in the Origins one, because it'll be before all the JJ ones. So yeah, that's my two